There's a new and critical update to the coronavirus negotiations that are taking place between congressional lawmakers and the White House. Now, yesterday it was reported that the White House was urgently asking GOP senators to approve one-time $600 direct checks to Americans as part of the coronavirus relief bill. And at that time, it really did seem as though the Trump administration was outflanking Democrats in Congress from the left. But now it's abundantly clear that that's not actually what's going on. It turns out that the one-time $600 check that would be sent to Americans would be a trade-off for essentially getting rid of the federal unemployment aid of $300 per week. Okay, that trade-off seems pretty ridiculous. And so Nancy Pelosi talked about it a little bit today. She certainly clapped back, but before she did, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin released a statement arguing this. Speaker Pelosi and I spoke today at 5 p.m. and on behalf of the president, I presented a $916 billion proposal. This proposal includes money for state and local governments and robust liability protections for businesses, schools, and universities. Now, Pelosi wasn't buying it, mostly because she had some insight that most others didn't have. And she says, while it is progress that Leader McConnell has signed off on a $916 billion offer based on the bipartisan framework, the president's proposal, which cuts unemployment insurance by $140 billion compared to the framework, is unacceptable. So she says it's a non-starter. I absolutely agree with her on that. And there are all sorts of issues in regard to the liability protections that are offered by Republicans. But before I get to that, and Katie Porter shredding Republicans for it, John, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, I find it very difficult to comment on this because the contents of the package change so often. I mean, just yesterday, Mitch McConnell was saying that it wasn't a prerequisite that the liability protections would be in there, but now it is again. I don't know, or maybe it isn't. I don't know. I honestly don't know. We don't know what is in the bill until after it's passed, and usually not even then. Usually we're not sure even at that point, especially the amount of money that we're talking about. But it is like it's again, it's perfect that they've come up with a financial trade-off, the one-time payments versus basically cutting off the unemployment aid that makes sense to people on uninsurance that plan to die in the next week and a half. It makes financial sense to them, or people who aren't yet on unemployment insurance and haven't wised up to the fact that the federal government is still effectively doing nothing to stop the spread of the virus. And so it's gonna get worse and more businesses are gonna get shut down. And so a lot of people that aren't currently unemployed are probably gonna end up unemployed by the end of this dark winter. And this is, as we'll probably end up talking about with Senator Sanders, this is shaping up to be the last thing that they'll do. Like, we've waited almost a year, and this, I'm trying to search for a word that I'm allowed to use on this network right now, is the last thing that they're going to do. Insult to injury in every possible way.
It's so shameful, especially when you put it in the context of how easily the funding for defense for the Pentagon is gonna pass, probably with a veto-proof vote in both the House, which already happened, and the Senate, which is likely to happen in the future. That's $740 billion. Every year the number goes up for the most part. And there's no debate about it. It's just gonna happen. But I do want to also talk a little bit about the liability protection or liability shield, which Mitch McConnell seems to only care about. Like, that's the only thing that he's been pretty insistent on. It seemed like maybe he can bend to Democrats' will on it if there were some pretty significant trade-offs. But Katie Porter did a great job in explaining why this is a horrendous provision in the stimulus bill. She says, you may have heard that Democrats and Republicans have agreed upon spending $900 billion to fund yet another round of small business loans, support hospitals and essential workers, and help the 10 million people who lost their jobs through no fault of their own. Everyone at the negotiating table, including Senate Republicans, have agreed to a compromise except one. Mitch McConnell is refusing to bring it to the floor unless it wipes away all COVID-related lawsuits filed that allege injury or death due to corporate negligence. And she goes on to say that these lawsuits represent the worst of the worst examples of disregard for human life, cases filed on behalf of nursing home patients and grocery store workers who died because the company in charge of keeping them safe prioritized cutting costs over protecting them. And I think one of the best examples to share with you guys is what is happening now with a Tyson meatpacking plant, where Tyson is facing a wrongful death lawsuit because dozens of their workers got sick and died due to their negligence. CNN has more details on that. Let's watch.
According to the allegations, the plant manager of the Waterloo facility organized a cash buy-in, winner-take-all betting pool for supervisors and managers to wager how many employees would test positive for COVID-19. In the end, more than 1,000 employees would catch the virus, about a third of the nearly 3,000 working at the plant.
I'm scared.
Ernest Latiker spoke to CNN's Gary Tuckman in April about his conversation with Tyson's HR department.
They told me I was safe, and they told me that everything was okay, and they told me I'll have a better chance of catching the coronavirus going out to Walmart than in Tyson. Come to work, you safe.
The Tyson employers also allegedly told their employees to ignore any symptoms they might be suffering from contracting coronavirus and to just keep working.
Yeah, it's just insane. Yeah, no, the era of self-regulation of plants like the Tyson one needs to change, which is why it's good that the Department of Agriculture is going to be controlled by Tom Vilsack, who, while he was governor of Iowa, said that they should self-regulate. Anyway, but we'll talk about that more later. So yeah, I can't. It's just so insulting. And the thing is, look, the reason that the liability shield is obviously such a priority for them, even though, again, as of yesterday, Mitch McConnell was saying that it wasn't important, isn't just because of all of the cases that we have right now or will have in the next couple of months. Those are bad and could be very expensive to these companies. But you know what's more expensive than a bunch of lawsuits all at once? It is years or decades of lawsuits. And COVID isn't a thing that either killed you or you survived. We are only beginning to understand the long-term damage that can be done to people's vascular system, their heart, their lungs, their reproductive system, we're finding out more recently too, as well as mental health issues. This is going to be one of those things where we're gonna learn more, and then there's gonna be class action lawsuits. And those are gonna be coming for literally years unless they're all cut off right now at the source. So they're talking about short-term COVID liability. I don't think that is the end game for them. I think they want to shut off possibly years of lawsuits about the sort of negligence that we just saw in that video.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.